Morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. So we're here today to talk about SEO in an AI world, as I'm sure you guys know. That's why you signed up. Thank you for braving the rain. And if anyone noticed any brownie around my face, please let me know, or just ignore it. We are recording this for our YouTube, so I'm really hoping it isn't, or else we won't be able to use that. So I'm Jack Kennedy. I am the founder of Invanity. We're a revenue-first marketing agency. We believe in kind of two principles within marketing: the idea of creating desire for a product or service, and then capturing the subsequent demand that comes from it. So that's kind of our philosophy. Everything we do in our reporting is about how much revenue you generate from your marketing activity, and we actually start going down to how much net profit you generate from your marketing activity. So won't bang on too much more about us, but I'm around afterwards if you want to ask me. And then I brought Chess today, who's the brains of the organisation with SEO and AI. So.
Yeah, hi, I'm Jess. I've worked in SEO at agencies for 7 years now since I graduated. So obviously there's been a lot of changes since then, but focusing now on quite heavily on the AI aspect of SEO at Invanity.
Today, as Beth touched on, we're going to cover what is the impact of AI on SEO and how's it changed things, how's it not changed things, and what's still as it should be. We've come with some actionable tips for SEO strategies. So what you actually need to take away today and going into your roles tomorrow, what kind of questions you should ask and how you should speak to your leadership teams and other people in your teams around it. And then we've tried to pull together some real examples. Bit of a caveat on that in advance. We only really, and not just us, but the first AI SEO brief started coming into us about September, October last year. So it's a fairly new thing. So sharing loads of results on it is pretty difficult, just because AI SEO takes months, years to perfect over time. So a lot of our stuff is theoretical, but we are going to share what some of the green shoots we see at the startup. I wouldn't want to sit here and be like, yeah, we know exactly how it works and you get great results, because anyone that does say that to you is lying. So we're not quite there yet. So yeah, over to Chess to kind of go into the more nuts and bolts at times.
So I won't go too much into detail on this, but why are we talking about AI SEO? And you guys probably know the answer. It's probably why you're here. But obviously, AI is becoming so much more prominent in search. It's always been there. So if you think about kind of the algorithms that are used on Google, that's always been kind of an AI aspect of it, but it's so much more visible now with your AI overviews and the LLMs and the ChatGPT that we're using. And so SEO has had to change as a result. And one of the caveats that I want to put in here is that, yes, it has changed, but that doesn't mean your whole SEO strategy has to change. That's definitely not what we're here to tell you need to do, is start again. If you're doing good SEO, you're probably 70% of the way there. It's just we have to adapt now to allow for these new AI changes that are coming into play, to make sure that we are serving the people in the way that they're now being served by kind of search engines and what they're giving them. A few other caveats sorry, my notes are on this screen, so if I'm just tapping, it keeps going dark. When we're talking about SEO in this talk, we're talking about search engine optimization, but we're not just talking about Google and LLM. So to us, a search engine is anywhere that someone can search. So for some people, the top search engine for your business might be TikTok or Instagram, because people can search there. It might be Amazon, because that's got a search bar, and sometimes that is the default place that they're going to search. So search engine optimization is kind of search everywhere optimization in that regard. And also, another caveat just to consider is that the share of LLM search, which I know it's such a big topic at the moment in kind of ChatGPT and things, but it is at the moment relatively small for most industries. So couldn't find a US kind of stat, an English stat, sorry, but in the US it makes up about 6% of US desktop searches, ChatGPT and things like that. So it's quite small. But if you consider that just last year it was half of that, it actually means that in trend terms, that is a massive jump. It actually makes it one of the fastest growing trends in consumer tech that they've recorded. And SEMrush actually predicts in the next kind of 2 to 3 years, probably, in a lot of industries, it will become more of a default search option than traditional search engines like Google.
Cool. I didn't have much to add there. The only thing I was going to say is that when you think about search, think about the last time you purchased a product or looked at a holiday or looked for some insights on a restaurant to go. Was your first thought Google, or were you thinking ChatGPT? Were you thinking TikTok? Were you thinking Instagram? So it's just a case of really understanding where, the people that are our buyers and our users that search, they're just like everyone sat in this room. So they're not some mystical creature that no one understands. They're humans like we are. So they search and they have the same kind of preferences and styles we do. So consider that throughout.
Yeah, so to start with, we just want to look at what the impact of AI on SEO is. And obviously that's going to caveat and kind of makes it make sense, kind of the strategies that you then have to kind of adapt to using. So we kind of see AI as changing, if we simplify it, I suppose, SEO in two main ways. So AI has changed the search environment, as I've already kind of spoken about. We've now got LLMs that we're trying to optimize. Tools are becoming bigger and better. So the search bar on Instagram is really great now. The search bar on TikTok and things is all great. And second, it's changed user behavior as a result, because it's reset people's expectations as to how fast and how conversational and how direct those answers they expect them to be. And as a result, how they're searching is completely changed from a really small keyword to a big, long, complex phrase that has a lot of very minute details, because the LLMs and the natural language processing that it's able to kind of use, it's able to understand those nuances and give a really specific answer. And when you put those two shifts together, what it really means is that visibility isn't just about ranking on Google anymore. It's about becoming a much more discoverable everywhere that your users might look.
And this is, we often speak about this very much like chicken and egg. You know, what came first? Did people get lazier or did tools get better? So when you start thinking about, you know, as Chess said, the way that you can use different search platforms, ChatGPT, it makes things so much easier to search. So was it the tools and tech that came first that kind of made people that way? Or did the tools and technology exist and people capitalized on it? Ultimately, it doesn't really matter, but it's worth considering that it's all about, everything about SEO remains the same, which is how quickly and easily can someone find the information about you or your brand, and where are they when they're looking for that information, and what kind of information about you do they want to absorb at that point in their journey.
So if we're just going to quickly drill into those two aspects in a little bit more detail, the change in the search environment is that LLMs are slightly different in how they work to traditional search. Obviously, you don't have that long list of blue links that you have to click through and find the answer for yourselves. It's giving you the complete answer to what your question was in the chat interface. And Google, therefore, and the traditional search engines are beginning to adapt to become more like that with things like AI mode and the AI overviews that they're presenting. We're also then, if we're thinking about social media platforms, because like we say, social media is a search engine in its own right, that's also becoming AI kind of focused in a way that maybe we don't see so visibly on the front end. But your Discover feed, for example, powered by very powerful AI kind of algorithms and things like that. But also there is an aspect of these kind of algorithms and the AI is learning when you're searching in a search bar for the top restaurant near me, who's the one that's going up at top, because it's giving you a list of results just like kind of a Google search engine would. So yes, LLMs are a new search environment, but also existing environments are also changing as well. And then the second shift is that behavior and expectations have changed from the users. So search behavior has changed. It's becoming a lot more conversational, as I've already said. In the past, you probably would have searched for something like best running shoes, and you would have looked through loads of articles on men's health or women's health and tried to compare your options, whereas now ChatGPT or something can just do that for you. You can be a lot more specific if you're looking for, I don't know, running shoes for flat feet and in long distance training. It will give you options that are specific to you. And therefore, that's how people are searching. They know that they can be more specific, so they are being a lot more specific.
Well, that's a great example as well. I actually did that exact search 2 weeks ago because I basically realised I'd put a little bit too much weight on. And when I was running, my shoes were giving me really bad joints. So I basically ChatGPT'd what is the best running shoe for someone that's a decent runner but carrying too much weight and wants to be nice on their ankles. And it brought up a set of the On Cloud shoes with a really thick sole on it. Now, Polly wasn't overly pleased, my other half, when she saw me out running in a pair of shoes that had a heel on it like that. But when I explained that the reason was because of my ankles, then she was even more disappointed that she's, you know, with someone so old as me at the moment.
So the second kind of place is that it's become a lot more multi-platform. So people aren't necessarily just defaulting to Google anymore. They're going to the search engine that they see as most fitting to their needs. So yes, it might be Google for some of those needs, but if they're looking for shopping and they just want something fast delivered tomorrow, they'll go straight to Amazon. Or they might go to Amazon for the buying part, but before that they've gone to Google to research the options or an LLM to research the options. They've looked at TikTok for the reviews for those options, and then they've gone to Amazon to buy the product once they've made their choice. So it's definitely becoming a lot more wider spread, and that's always kind of been the case in some ways, but now that there are so many options, as we've already seen, it's definitely expanding even further. It's also quite discovery driven, so this kind of applies mostly to social media, I'd say, but a lot of brands on social media are being discovered not because someone's directly searching for them, but because it's appeared in their Discover feed. And the result on that on search is that there's some companies that have got that big brand on social media are relying a lot more on branded searches in terms of Google searches and things like that, because they've seen your brand on social media and therefore they've recognized your name, seen your name, and when they want to eventually buy, they'll go to Google and just search your name rather than having researched and found you on there in the first place. And then the final one is,
sorry.
you were going, is answer first. So people, as you probably know, they want things as fast as they possibly can, and going through those long blue list of links is too time consuming now. So they're really expecting, if they can just get an answer, that it just appears for them. So that's why AI overviews are so popular, and that's why a lot of websites are seeing their clicks decrease, because people don't actually need to click through the list of links. They'll just trust the information that they've seen at the top. And it's why Google is having to adapt, because people are used to that on ChatGPT and things, and so they've had to pull it into their own channels.
Can I click now?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So when we connect those two, search stops becoming a single channel. So we've seen that it's becoming so much bigger. People are searching on multiple channels. There's so many different places that they could be searching. It becomes a whole ecosystem that you've now got to kind of optimize for. You're not just optimizing your website as you would have been in the past, or maybe you would have been doing some backlink building as some third-party things, but you've really got to be looking at, depending on who your customers are, of course. If you're not a B2B company, then LinkedIn optimization probably isn't for you. But you need to be looking at as a much wider scope and not just seeing SEO as somewhere where you optimize your website only. It's a much bigger discipline now, where you've got to be optimizing social platforms and helping with mixing with social teams and things like that.
And this is probably one of the things I've struggled most with. So obviously Chess works in SEO all day, every day, and has done for years. When these changes started coming at the start of the year, it was really hard for me to disassociate SEO as its own performance channel. So often I saw SEO as being like paid social or Google Ads or email marketing, where it was its own individual channel, and you could optimize that channel for specific leads and you could really forecast it. What we're basically now seeing is that SEO used to be able to sit at the top as a strategy, and then you'd be able to have like content plans and backlinks and events that come off it. You actually have to almost flip that a little bit now and go, well, you have to just start doing things that are genuinely good for your marketing. So producing thought leadership, not for SEO, but because it's good to produce thought leadership, doing, updating your website with more valuable information that's easier for a user, not for SEO, but because it helps your users. So think of SEO as sitting at the bottom of what you do now rather at the top, and it has to feed into everything else. It can no longer be its own standalone channel, and there's a good and a bad thing. It's good because it means that you genuinely have to be a good brand with good practice, with good reviews. Those reviews have to go across everything from Indeed to Google Business to whatever your relevant industry publication is. So you genuinely have to be a good, nice, well-structured brand and business to show, which is great for the user, but it's meant that if you're a new startup or you're a small business or you're just not that good for whatever reason, you can no longer game the system by putting keywords in the URL, the H1, the meta description, the alt tags. You actually have to do a wider brand marketing and performance marketing piece, which is one of the biggest changes we're having to explain to our clients at the moment.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. So what this means for SEO, I've kind of touched on that on the previous slide, I suppose, but where we optimize is expanding. So it's from search engine optimization to search everywhere optimization. And I'll touch on this in a minute. When I say search everywhere optimization, that doesn't necessarily mean you have to optimize everywhere equally. That's definitely not what I'm saying. But just as importantly, how we optimize has changed. So we used to be optimizing for rankings, and that was a very different thing to how we're now having to optimize for discovery, for understanding, for trust, and for inclusion in different places, which is a much bigger kind of story and a lot trickier to navigate and to strategize for. But hopefully once you kind of understand your customers, it does become a lot clearer.
And I think that's might be on this, kind of on here, but that's one of the main things that we talk about is understanding your buyer journeys. Now it sounds so, I hate saying it out loud because it's the most horribly cliche thing you can say, which is understand your pain points and your journeys and your buyers. But we actually, if you've not done it for at least 12 months, you need to redo it again, because understanding two things, I think, that brings it beyond, what are their pain points, because I don't think buyers in the UK and the US and those markets, we don't have pain points really anymore, because if we have a genuine pain, we just go and pay to fix it. We've got resource and we just fix it. So what we have to start thinking about is, what is their buying journey? What are the triggers that cause them to buy? And the way I always think about it is, what would trigger a search? And it's not like, they're having to stay late to finish a report. It's more, know they're not getting home to see their kids play badminton that night because they're doing a report. So what are the problems? Because by truly understanding the journey, then you can understand where they search, and you can understand when it's appropriate to interrupt them with information versus where they go actually looking for information that changes the structure of what you do. So it sounds really cliche, but you need to do your buyer journeys and you need to do them properly rather than just quickly skimming over them going, yeah, they look okay. Do it with research, do it with understanding. There's loads of really good, Claude is our AI tool at the moment that can help it with synthesization of data. So that's one of the main takeaways is revisit them and make sure you're in the right place at the right time with the right message. Because ultimately, as this slide says, the foundations of SEO still matter. So the way I've been trying to explain it to some of our clients is a year ago, SEO maybe had 100 things you needed to do, say. And of those 100, 80 of them could be handled by someone like Chess. So technical health, hashtag structure, content writing, 80 out of the 100 things could be handled by an SEO. Now, there was things that were like Google reviews and case studies and award entries and all of those things that the actual client or you as a business had to do. What AI's done is it's brought in, there's now 300 things that need to be doing. And the problem is an SEO like Chess can only really do 100 of those because she can't make sure that we've got a client that's a fire and security client. She can't ensure that they are registered by the correct governing bodies. She can't ensure that they've got the correct technology partners. She can't ensure that the engineer that turns up in a van turns up on time. All of those things impact brand reputation. They impact sentiment. They impact how people talk about you online. So, but those initial kind of 80 things, which is some of the stuff here, they still really matter. So technical health being things like no 404 errors. Is your site fast? Is it mobile optimized? Crawlability. We talk about crawlability and use a different word about bringing it out. Scannability, searchability. There's a word basically that's in how easily can the AI tools actually scan your site and pull the information out. Like that still matters because it needs to be able to read you, understand you, and index you still. Is your content well structured? So have you got H tags? Have you got a clear menu structure? Have you, are you using schema markup in the right places? And then EEAT, I hate this. It means experience, something, authority and trust. Experience, expertise, authority and trust. So making sure that you're still building those things. Like all of these foundations still matter. The important thing is there's now just more to do. And the challenging thing about there being more to do, as I'm sure most people in this building are finding, is you're being asked to do more, but you're being given less budget and less resource and less time to do it. And then you're still asked to hit the same goals as before. So it's a really difficult kind of situation, basically.
Yeah. So some of just going into now a few of the strategy bits, I suppose, that are that kind of more, that extra, that slight change, I suppose. So again, kind of touched on this already, start optimizing everywhere, but with the caveat that optimize everywhere with the most effort in the places that your users and the kind of AI systems are actually looking. So if I was to look at a B2B software company, for example, their customers are probably looking at LinkedIn, LLMs, Google search and things like that. So those are the probably 3 top channels that they need to be looking at optimizing. But you've got to also look below that in terms of, yes, you're optimizing for LLMs, but where are the LLMs looking? So you can quite often see that in the citations, for example, if you run some prompts in an LLM and just look where they're pulling from. But that's going to be really important because, yes, your users might not look at, G2 reviews or Reddit or kind of all of the industry publications that you've been mentioned in, but the AIs and LLMs are. So you need to be looking and making sure that you're in those and you've really analysed and considered those in your strategy as well. But then there's a difference. So if you were, for example, a makeup company that is targeting Gen Z. Gen Z actually search more on TikTok now than they do on Google. So 55%, I think, go to TikTok as their default search engine compared to 50%, which will go to Google. So as in kind of 50% will go to Google, 54% will go to TikTok. And therefore, TikTok's probably the channel that you're looking at. And TikTok's algorithms aren't necessarily looking at the G2 reviews or your presence on Google and things like that. They're looking at your content, the videos you're posting, your profile, the hashtags you're using and things like that. So that's your kind of SEO, search engine optimization, that you'll be focusing on. So you've really, as Jack's already said, you've got to understand who your customers are, where are they searching, and what is the things that are impacting those search engines to decide where is most powerful for you to be focusing your efforts. Because yes, you do need to make sure that your brand is consistent everywhere. So your phone number, your telephone number, your email address is all consistent, but you don't need to put your maximum effort and your optimizations and full effort into every channel, just the ones that are most important to you.
And there's, on that first part about the citations, there's a tool that we use. I'm not sure how you say it, because I don't, but it's spelled PEEC. So I think it's peak.ai. Now, that's quite an expensive tool, but obviously we have to invest in it for our clients. That allows you to see basically where, if you put a prompt in, so like what's the best marketing agency in Oxford, it will then tell you where it pulls that information from in the tool. But a way to do it on a slight budget is list kind of 10 or 15 prompts that you think people might search for you guys on Google, and type them in, and it comes up with the citations. It tells you where it's pulled the information from. So do a bit of an audit and see what kind of channels pull into that answer, and then check what your presence is on those channels, because that's obviously the ones that the AI tools and the LLMs are trusting. So it takes a bit longer, but it's definitely worth looking into to make sure that you pick the right places for the LLMs, and then also find the right places for your buyers and your users at the point in time.
Mm-hmm. And just to add to that, I would just make sure that when you run a thing like that, maybe run those prompts every day over a week to spot trends, because I think it's 90% of the time ChatGPT or whatever channel you're using will give a different answer to what it gave the day before or the last time it was run. So to give a kind of get a holistic idea, try maybe a spreadsheet or however you want to do it of these are the prompts that I think I'm going to come up for, and make sure they're quite bottom of funnel at that stage, because otherwise it will just give an informational answer and you're probably not going to show anyway. Record the different citations in there, and then hopefully you can probably use a tool like ChatGPT itself to analyse the results on what's cropped up the most commonly, what types of resources they are, whether they're listicles or review sites or anything like that.
And even more fun, one of the most scary things I found was that two people in the same company could look at the same thing, but where something like a Gemini or a ChatGPT understands you as a person, it gives two different results. And even more scary is there's a rollout coming where Gemini will essentially integrate with your email and your photos. So it will look at who's been emailing you, what companies, and it will personalize based on that. And it can look at your photos to understand things like what kind of colors do you like, what kind of situations do you like. So it's getting quite scary, and it's almost like a little bit of a tangent from me now, but I genuinely think that in the next 18 months to 2 years, I don't think any of us will be doing any form of marketing activation. I think AI and online tools will do all of the activation stuff. I think we will be doing the strategy and the creative, but the actually pushing things live, monitoring them, checking the performance, that will all be done by AI tools. And we're seeing, if anyone has a chance, it's one of many shameless plugs today, but Chess wrote a really good article about Google Marketing Live 2026. It's on our website about the changes that they introduced. I read it and it scared me, but it's really interesting and definitely worth reading for people working in marketing.
Yeah, just to calm, that is an opt-in feature at the moment. It's not just going through your photos and emails, it's AI mode. It has rolled out globally though, so it might eventually become something that is more mainstream. So because people are searching a lot more long tail prompts and things like that, we're moving now from keyword to conversations. So in the past, you probably would have, an SEO strategy for content might have been, let's have a look at what keyword gets 1,000 searches a month, it's relevant for me, let's write a blog about that topic. Whereas now, because so many of the queries that are being searched today are probably the first time it's ever been searched, because they're so long and they're so kind of niche, I suppose. We've got to be kind of optimizing for those conversations and understanding what our customers are actually searching for in order to be featured in those responses, I suppose. So a simple way to kind of exercise to kind of think about probably when trying to do this, I suppose, is to narrow down to maybe one of your products and services and speak to any customer service teams you've got, speak to your sales team, speak to any of them and discover what are the questions that they are most commonly being asked, because that's always a really good starting point for the content that you put on your product pages and the content that you can then expand on in your blogs and things, because they're probably the things that people are quite commonly focusing on. But also things like FAQs, because people are searching questions more commonly now because they're looking for the answer rather than trying to find the answer themselves and then searching for a solution in that kind of way. They can be really useful. And if you're using FAQs, make sure you've got FAQ schema on those as well, which can be quite useful for them to pull out those answers. Like I say, question-led content and using natural language, because people are searching in natural language now. So to kind of to match that and to be more likely to be pulled out from LLM tools. You don't have to be speaking in keyword optimized forms. You know, they've got that natural language processing. They can understand what you're saying, and it also seems a lot more natural to the user if you're speaking in that language. So that's really powerful. Topical depth, go as far as you see necessary. So it can be quite tempting. I think in the past we used to have these guides, these evergreen content guides that were like, so you'd have to scroll for hours and you'd have loads of headings in there, but that's not necessarily relevant all the time now. It's got to be, you don't need to add that context of a digital marketing agency in the past would never dream of not having a blog on what is SEO, but you probably don't need that now if you're experiencing, if you're kind of showing it in other ways to eat that you're experts in SEO and customer personas. If you understand your customers, if you know what they're asking, what they care about, then you know what to talk about to them.
And as a real life example of what we've started doing, a lot of our clients, we've gone back through some of the copy and started making things like the H tags and some of the body copy slightly more conversational, so that when it churns the answers back out in AI overviews, it relays it in a way that the user could read rather than the way we wanted to. So pretty small impact at the moment, but it's something that is making a bit of a difference.
So from backlinks to brand signals. So I'm definitely not here saying backlinks are useless, don't bother getting backlinks, but backlinks have definitely lost the power that they used to have. So backlinks used to be a key part of any SEO strategy. You know, you'd make a page, you'd put all your keywords in your headings, and you'd try and get some really high authority backlinks to a page. And that is still valuable, especially from really relevant sources to your business. So if you're in the past, I would say if you're a local small business and you've got a link from a giant publication in America, that probably would have had a really nice impact. But actually, being a small business based in Tame, for example, a link in a local publication that's maybe lower authority but much more relevant is a lot more powerful. And you've got to look beyond backlinks now. So AI systems don't just evaluate links. They're clever enough to be able to just see a brand mention and use the context that's around you to kind of understand that that is about you and to attribute that to you. They're looking at reviews. They're looking at any press coverage they're getting, industry discussions, social conversations. They're looking absolutely everywhere about your brand. So you need to be influencing that as an SEO in your SEO strategies, not just focusing on the backlinks, because they're quite easy to get now. I don't know how many emails we get a day from companies saying we can sell you 20 backlinks for £200 a link, and therefore it's been acknowledged, it's been taken by Google, and it's therefore just not as powerful as it used to be.
And that's a really interesting point, where a lot of where this SEO and AI stuff's going is that Google's just getting better at understanding, as I said earlier, like if you're genuinely a good business, and it knows that, it can tell when someone's purchased backlinks because of the other people on it. So it started to figure out, well, you've just paid for that credibility, therefore you're not that credible. So actually, to Chess's point, earning more local, more authentic reviews and backlinks and brand mentions is worth so much more than a large publication that you simply just pay for. So definitely worth considering that.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah, sorry. And this we've kind of touched on already throughout this presentation, I think, but SEO just doesn't operate alone anymore. It's just so reliant on other marketing activities that you're doing. So you really need to be making sure that your marketing teams are speaking to each other, that ideas and campaigns that you're running are working together. So you need to be speaking to your PR team, because those mentions and the authority that they can help build for you are invaluable for SEO. You need to be talking to your content team to make sure that the content that they're producing also helps with the SEO and the message that you're putting out, because it also builds that eat for you in the topical depth that it gives. You've got to be building your brand and the brand marketing team, because that's going to help with branded search demand, recognition, trust, even with the traditional search engines. We've got kind of those personalized search results on those now. So the results that you see probably aren't what other people are seeing, because it's relying on your search history and the brands that you've interacted with in the past to decide who's first and who's second. And also you're much more likely to click on a link to a brand that you recognise versus a brand that you've never seen before. Social, so we've already said social in its own right is a search engine, but it's also being pulled from, I think LinkedIn is one of the top LLM cited sources for B2B. It's a massive channel, and so is YouTube. YouTube is one of the, I think it was, I'm not sure if it's been pipped now, but it was the top cited source for Gemini. So you've got to be looking at your social strategy and making sure that your social team is helping you out, and you're giving captions and strong descriptions and all the good optimization bits for your videos. And even paid media. So it's not a direct influence, but paid media probably will form part of that multi-channel journey that a lot of users are going through. So it needs to be kind of supporting your SEO strategy, especially in kind of places that you're struggling to optimize for in terms of SEO, having a paid campaign that kind of fills those gaps for you, and working with your team in that way is a great way to help with SEO.
And I know that Beth asked us to share an example of where brand had an impact on that as part of the talk. And as I'm sure most of you know, the World Cup's coming up. In the US, a stat I saw the other day, and I wish I could have got the chart up, I didn't have time this morning, but the search traffic for Adidas has gone through the roof. And I don't know if anyone's seen the new Adidas campaign, but it's like everywhere at the moment. But one of the interesting things is that in the US, Lionel Messi is in one of 4 adverts on the TV in the United States at the moment in the build up to the World Cup. So, and he's, all sorts of different things, but he's an Adidas ambassador, and part of that has really driven up demand for Adidas. So what you're looking at there is that suddenly all of these really good brand signals for Adidas about how good the campaigns are, about how often Messi's being seen, about the World Cup. Yes, it's driven attention for their football boots and their shirts, but it's also driven attention for everything else that Adidas does across the business. And interestingly, Nike are now trying to catch up. So that'll be fun to see how that plays out. But that's an example of where someone's used brand and a brand marketing campaign, and it's driven huge amounts of SEO benefits because of all the brand mentions, the digital PR, the content, and the kind of noise that's come with it at the same time. So some expectations that we're trying to talk through clients with, and I'm sure you guys have all got bosses or people you need to explain your decisions to, so this is kind of how I'm trying to do it, is expect less clicks, because what's happening is if you were to Google, say, does Invanity do performance marketing? You no longer actually have to click on our website to see if we do it. It churns up that AI overview. So what we're seeing is in a lot of brands and services and businesses is that AI is kind of replacing the need to go on a website in the awareness and consideration stages. So there's less traffic at that stage going to your website. So that's where the traffic drops have come from. So if you look at your GA4 and you guys are seeing huge traffic drops from like October, November last year, don't panic, so is everybody else. Like not one single industry's come out well from this. But what you should be seeing is that you get higher engagement rates and higher conversion rates, because theoretically the people that now visit your website know who you are, what you do, what you offer, and what you sell. So the only time you've got a problem is if your actual conversion rates and your revenues are going down from the traffic, there's a problem. But if you're seeing a reduction in traffic but everything else seems okay, that's perfectly normal, and don't panic. Because you're also getting, expecting users to come from multiple different channels as well. We've recently written some stuff on how I'd imagine all of you have searched something on an AI tool before and just taken the recommendation and gone with it. So you've not actually then followed it through to a website of someone else. You've kind of just seen, okay, that's what I need to do. Or you've gone to a TikTok, or you've gone to an Instagram, or people aren't visiting a website in such a linear way anymore. So our advice is to start looking at how much are you spending on your marketing, and how much are you getting back in revenue, and is that multiplier still healthy? If it's getting better, you're fine. If it's getting worse, you need to look more into it. But don't panic if the clicks are going down. For small brands, it's going to become really difficult to compete with the bigger brands, because Google's building so much of its ranking, and AI tools are building so much of its ranking based on brand. Now, if you're a small startup local brand competing against the likes of an Adidas, the example being like Gymshark trying to do what they did today, probably still would because they're a brilliant brand, but it's so much harder for them because it's hard to be a disruptor, because the ranking tools are no longer based on just your website and small snippets of presence. It's more overarching. And the most disappointing part as well is, they're taking with both hands basically, because where SEO is becoming harder, more brands are turning to paid media, which is driving up cost per clicks, which is making everything there more expensive as well. So don't be alarmed if any of these things happen. And don't be alarmed if you're struggling to relay that to your bosses or people you need to tell. Like, we are too, and we really understand what we're trying to say. My only piece of advice is, if you take with one hand, try and give back with the other. So a great example is, at the moment, we've stopped basically reporting on organic traffic to clients because that's not that relevant. We've stopped reporting on keyword ranking in SEMrush because keyword ranking doesn't mean that much. We're changing it to be more like share of voice and things around like brand authority. So if you're going to take something away from your leadership team or the people you report to, try and give them something else back in return. So say, well, we no longer report on this because we report on this, and here's why. And so try to give you some examples. Again, as I mentioned at the start, there's not a huge amount that we can necessarily walk all the way through. But the first one I'll give is what we're doing for our brand, because we are trying to practice what we preach. So if you look at a lot of our website now, it's actually 3/4 of the way through a big rebrand and messaging and positioning stuff. So it's not amazing, ironic really. But what we basically realised is that it's LLMs and AI tools are still citing loads of our old information. So what we did is we looked at all the things that cite us, and we did a really deep dive into our buyer journey. And we found that when people employ an agency, they don't actually go on Google search or the kind of clients we're looking for. They tend to go on platforms like Clutch, The Drum, they look at LinkedIn, they come to events like this, they visit content online. So that's why we're doing events like this. We've updated all of our NAP profile. We're now a Clutch top 15 global agency for performance marketing, which is kind of cool. We're The Drum recommended because that was part of our strategy. All of our content we're now recording because we turn it into YouTube content where it can then pull out conversational tones to put into AI overviews. We've started producing more blog content that's based on updates. We've started producing more thought leadership, and we're trying to make sure that everything we do is consistent within a content strategy. And then Chess basically gave me this report that was just biblically bad on like how bad our rankings and AI overviews were. It was god awful. So that was a rough morning. I think I was hungover as well, which really didn't help. But what we're now doing is we've got a new set of metrics. We're working through it, and honestly, I reckon we've spent 200 to 300 hours so far this year on this as a minimum. You know, from a client's perspective, that's probably 20 or 30 grand's worth of investment. We've seen the smallest of green shoots. But what we have started seeing is that our citations have changed. It's pulling from The Drum and it's pulling the correct recommendations. We've had 2 really nice RFPs come through. So we're starting to see small sprouts that come from this. But it's really important to remember, like, and I'll preach it, you know, for as long as the day I die, is that it takes time. You can't start a strategy. We did a thing on our vlog called the confidence gap, where essentially every week you put effort into something. So if you imagine a linear line that goes that way, which is how much effort you're putting in, and that's, you know, 10 hours, 20 hours, 30 hours, 40 hours, we all know that marketing doesn't happen straight away. So you've got this second line that goes underneath it, which is like no updates, nothing's changing. So you're plowing hours into it, and then at some point it will pick up and it does that. So what we're in at the moment is that little confidence gap, which is between the effort and the impact. Now, that in the world of AI and SEO, that is like at least 6 months. So when you start relaying this messaging, it's really difficult, but you have to make sure you tell whoever you're working on that, look, you can't judge this for 6 months. Here's the strategic roadmap and here's how we're going to move through it. But that's the update from us. So yeah, that's how we do it. But we have done a couple of bits for clients, or Chess has, so.
Yeah, so one of our clients is a market insights strategy company called Strat7. They've worked with huge global brands, but they were realizing that actually a lot of those kind of companies were going to ChatGPT to try and find the short list of the companies they were going to reach out to and contact. Because their users had moved from going to Google and searching for market research agency, and they were going to ChatGPT to be a lot more specific and look for, I need a healthcare research company that conduct ethnographic research and build it into an actionable strategy for me, which is exactly what they do. So it's the kind of thing they exactly wanted to appear for, but because they didn't have the content on the site that spoke about healthcare, that spoke about ethnographic research, they weren't being shown for it. And so we worked with them and we decided that we needed to build industry-specific pages. We needed to add methodology pages to their service kind of offering pages, and also create deeper expertise supporting content. So a strategy for content was a massive part of that in terms of reports, guides, thought leadership around the key industries that they were highly focused on and the kind of methodologies that they preferred kind of doing and were most valuable to them as a business.
And the important part there is that the content marketing part wasn't driven from the SEO need necessarily. It was driven from a gap in what their users were looking for on the site. So the reason we suggested content was because they needed it to support buyer journeys and to support understanding of their products. Because often if an AI tool can't understand your products and it's scanning it at scale and synthesizing it, the users haven't got that much of a chance either. So what we do with the content strategy, and Chess might correct me, is basically we tell you to produce a content strategy. You would then produce, well, here's what we think we should talk about and what our users care about. And then Chess and the team would come in and say, right, well, if you're going to talk about that, here's a topic you should put, here's where you should publish it, here's a PR company you should reach out to for authority on it. And rather than being the things that dictate the content strategy, we help shape it once it's been made so that it has the maximum impact in distribution.
Yeah. So this hasn't been obviously rolled out for too long. In terms of probably 6 months, it's maybe been kind of live and going, but ChatGPT has now become a lead source for them, which is they're great and they're happy with. Obviously their deal sizes are quite big, so the volume is quite low, but any kind of deal for them from ChatGPT is a great source. One of the biggest SEO leads that they actually generated came from one of the new pages that we built from them of the ethnographic market research page. So we could see that was the page that they had landed on from ChatGPT as a source. So that was a really great signal and something we were able to go to their team and say it was worth it. This is kind of I think it was a £150,000 deal that you've managed to get from one page that we've built. In terms of organic visibility, 600% up, and when I say 600% up, that's just kind of on the terms and things that we're tracking. We're not just giving them a whole list of terms because some of them probably won't be relevant, but these are the terms that we deem as valuable to them. And so far they've seen a 13.2 times revenue return from their SEO efforts that they've put in. So it has been quite powerful, and they were not going to argue their site before was quite basic, so it has been quite a nice starting point to start from, but it's all been quite positive in terms of the efforts have been worthwhile.
And I think the important thing about when we optimized here is a bit of a plug, but again, they had I think they were either 5.6 or 5.7 net profit return. So for every pound they gave us, they made £5.60 back in profit at the bottom line because of how high margin it is working through something like an LLM tool for them. So because we have it with Invanity as well, is that if people come to us through Google search and a traditional search, the average order value tends to be significantly lower because they're a less informed buyer and they're a less direct buyer. Our best buyers are now using these tools to help with the shortlisting, and that's what they saw here, is that it's actually driving higher average order values with better margins and more engaged clients because it's a better platform to suit their needs. So that was important for us as well. So we wanted to share 3 next steps that you can go with basically tomorrow or this afternoon and start doing. Number 1 is make sure you're described consistently across the citations that matter. So make sure that for us, it was Google Business, the drum, it was Clutch, Indeed, LinkedIn, and our Instagram and our YouTube. So making sure that all 7 of those have the same name, the same address, the same phone number, same contact details. Make sure that you give the same description of yourself. Number 2, check the technical foundations. Those things still matter. So, make sure you do a site health crawl, no 404s, no mobile responsiveness. So check all of those things. And number 3, understand what platforms you actually want to start optimizing for, because it's really easy to be like, oh, we should be ChatGPT or we should do this because you hear a lot of noise. Take that step back and start understanding where do you need to be and why. It's right. So we have produced, and this went live today, so this is the first time anyone's seen it. This is a really, really good guide on SEO in an AI world. So what that is, it's got all the data, all the stats, it's got loads of actionable points in it that you guys can take away, and I'm so happy to see people scanning it.
If it works.
Cool. And once everyone's done that, they can actually leave their phones out, because I'm going to go for I'm hoping the marketing camp community can help us a little bit on this one, and I've not told Beth this is in here, but she'll be okay with it. We've currently got more videos than subscribers on our YouTube channel, and that's quite embarrassing. So if anyone would like to help, we are there, and that is the end of our talk today, and we're going to hand back to Beth. Well, yeah.